Thank you very much, and thank you to the media for accommodating a pretty significant time change that we have at COP28 in the United Arab Emirates. Final day for us was here today at COP28 in Saskatchewan. I would say, very honored to be here by invitation of the host country, the United Arab Emirates. And one of the biggest achievements with the support of the UAE and a credit to the UAE is the inclusion of our global energy and mining sectors and our nuclear sector at this conference. Just a few short years ago, that just would not have been the case at this forum. And our partners in these industries, from a Saskatchewan perspective, are very much part of the solution. And it's imperative that they are at the table this year and every year moving forward, as we saw with some of the accomplishments that we have. And I would say one of the accomplishments of significance at this conference was what started as 22, what I believe now is at least 24 and quite likely growing, countries that are committed to a tripling of their nuclear power footprint in their respective country. Included among them was Canada. We're steadfast in our promotion of Saskatchewan's stable regulatory regime that we have, and how our sustainable industries in our province are reducing emissions each and every day, while we're providing the world with the food, the fuel, and the fertilizer that it requires. The Saskatchewan Pavilion hosted 57 panel discussions and events that featured more than 60 various companies and organizations from across our province and across the nation and around the world. I was pleased to be a part of 16 of those panels and events and conducted more than 27 meetings with other countries, companies, and industries that have a Saskatchewan interest. And I also attended a number of reception events and announcements within the delegation that accompanied us here. One significant announcement that I would just highlight was this very morning, when the government of Saskatchewan and Bayer Crop Science announced a new memorandum of understanding. And with this MOU, we will see the province and Bayer partner on exploring sustainable agricultural technologies with the ultimate goal of lowering greenhouse gas emissions in farming, even lower than they are today. This will include work in digital farming, smart agriculture, as well as precision farming techniques. And this new partnership was an exciting moment for our province to sign an agreement directly with what is one of the largest industry players in the world, and most certainly the College of Agricultural and Bioresources, as well as the Global Institute for Food Security, are going to be part of this partnership moving forward. We were looked at partnerships on clean energy that were signed between the University of Regina and the PTRC with Khalifa University. There was a partnership, cooperation partnership on nuclear power between the Saskatchewan Research Council and also Khalifa University. There was a partnership agreement on energy innovation between the University of Regina, the University of Saskatchewan, and Saskatchewan Polytechnic. We had a number of guest panelists, including Minister Champagne, who joined us for a uranium powering the future discussions. And I would just say this about our time here at COP28, which was very much focused on advocating as to the sustainable ways in which Saskatchewan industries and Saskatchewan people are providing food security and energy security to so many global citizens in more than 150 countries. This was directly in contrast to what we saw from the federal government. And if it is truly the goal of this conference, and needs to be the goal of all of us as multi-levels of government, the goal to reduce emissions, we have many of the solutions that are necessary to do that, and we're sharing them with the world at COP28. They were on full display, whether it was the ag industry, whether it was our oil industry, whether it was the energy and the nuclear industry, whether it was our mining industry, or whether it was a number of the various companies and organizations that surround and support each of those export-based industries. Unfortunately, what we saw was a federal government that has revealed in this attendance at COP28 that it isn't actually about reducing emissions. Rather, we have seen their attendance focused on targeting the shutdown of a complete industry, regardless of whether they're going to meet their emissions targets or not. Net zero is no longer the goal for our federal government, and that was obvious this week. If it were, the federal government would not be talking about phasing out the energy industry altogether. in Saskatchewan, as I say, we often talk of the food, fuel, and fertilizer that we produce. It is the most sustainable food, fuel, and fertilizer that you can find on Earth. And our government will continue to advocate at every opportunity, like we did at COP28, on behalf of those industries, on behalf of Saskatchewan communities and families that are involved in those industries. The world looks for sustainable production of food, fuel, and fertilizer, and it's Saskatchewan that will provide it. And as I said, that was the message that we brought to COP28. We're going to continue to follow up on the many relationships that were formed and that were strengthened at COP28, both with the people of the United Arab Emirates, as well as a number of people from countries around the world, 200 countries that attended this conference. So I would take any questions if you have them at this point.
Thank you, Premier. Appreciate those opening remarks. Now we'll open up for questions. So if you do have a question, feel free to just use the raise hand function, and we'll call on you to unmute yourself. Liam, I see your hand. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. Hello. So COP28, of course, is a forum for world leaders to talk about climate change. Are you personally worried or scared about the future of the warming planet?
We do have some concerns with respect to where the discussion is going. When we see announcements that were made this week, for example, by our own federal government that are not any longer focused on providing some of the most sustainable products to the world, which is what Saskatchewan is focused on, and is the entire reason as to why we participated in COP28 to the level that we did. The world is going to need these products for a period of time, whether it be oil, whether it be food we're going to need for as long as we're here, but whether it be some of the mine products that we have. And so what we should do in the meantime, if it's a transitionary product like oil, we should ensure that we are purchasing the most sustainable oil that we can find on Earth. And in the case of Saskatchewan, we have a product that is produced with a 25% lower carbon footprint than any like product that is produced in other areas of the world, as per the global average goes. By phasing out a product in Saskatchewan that is arguably more sustainable than a like product in another part of the world, you are forcing not only us, but our customers to utilize that other product that is maybe from a jurisdiction that doesn't have the highest ethical standards and certainly doesn't have the environmental standards that we have in Saskatchewan. And so as we reduce our emissions profile, and this is about emissions, not about reducing industries or phasing industries out, we need to remember just that and work with the industries in Canada as either the Canadian government or a subnational government or a municipal government in ensuring that we are doing everything we can to have those industries producing the most sustainable products that they can, and we are producing more sustainable products than virtually anywhere else on Earth today, but doing what we can to advocate for those comparatively sustainable industries to ensure that they can employ and create wealth in our communities for years to come.
Just a quick follow-up to then, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. But so are you personally then worried about the warming climate? I understand you disagree with the federal government's stance on how they're dealing with it and how we have sustainable products that you want to push. But does the concept of a warming planet concern you?
I'm personally concerned with two things. One, the amount of emissions that we are putting in to our atmosphere, and two, some of the conversation as to how we are going to change that. There is a positive conversation that is focused on the most sustainable products that we can find, of which we're producing in Saskatchewan. And there's another conversation that I would say is very much focused on phasing some of those products out locally, and by locally I mean within our nation. But then the folks that we're dealing with are just going to find them somewhere else. That was on full display when we had the Chancellor of Germany in Canada asking to purchase LNG. From an allied nation, or at least Germany certainly felt that Canada was an allied nation. he was told that we didn't have a business case in Canada to provide that LNG. Within 2 weeks, they purchased that same LNG from 2 other countries in another area of the world. It did not go unpurchased, and we must remember that because we have in Canada some of the cleanest LNG available. We don't produce a lot of that in Saskatchewan, but we do in Canada. When it comes to food, we do produce the most sustainable food. When it comes to uranium for clean nuclear power, we produce that. When it comes to heavy crude products and some of the oil products that we produce down in the southern part of our province, when you compare those to light products around the world, they are the cleanest that you can find. And if you are in need of those products for a period of time, you should buy them from Saskatchewan. And so what bothers me, Liam, is, and what I'm concerned about, is the conversation that is focused on one's own perceived reality and what the consequences of making decisions on your own perceived reality might be. And, as we've seen in other areas of the world, most recently in Germany in recent years, when they ended up buying about a third of their gas, oil, and coal from Russia, the consequences of that reality can be quite harsh.
Next, we'll go to Brian Zinchuk from Pipeline Online. Brian, you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Yeah, there you go. Premier, can you hear me now?
We got you, Brian.
All right. So it was clear after the last COP that you decided that Saskatchewan and yourself need to be in the room where it happens. You've spent an extraordinary week. Usually you don't spend a week on any particular mission like this there and participating in numerous meetings. Do you think you had the impact of being in that room?
Yeah, more than actually we had anticipated on with respect to impact. I think, first of all, the 59 or 60 organizations that attended with us, I would hope felt that it was a positive impact if they were able to communicate with the global audience and with potentially customers or people of concern, that people of similar industries, that they could share concerns, raise opportunities with and have some good dialogue. Second, I think Saskatchewan was on full display with the pavilion that we had with respect to the products that we have and the fact that we produce them more sustainably than many other areas of the world. Now, there's some that say those products shouldn't even be available. Well, that isn't realistic. Those products may decrease in use over time, but it isn't realistic to think that they're just simply not going to be available today. And the consequences of making decisions around a thought process like that are quite dire. And there's no government that should be that short-sighted or selfish, quite frankly, in their view. If your question would lead to, would we consider this type of investment again? I think there's a number of factors that would go into that. We're happy with the investment we made in the United Arab Emirates because of the relationship that we had with the Emirati government and the Emirati people. We have an office on the ground here that works at strengthening that relationship each and every day. That office on the ground was able to support not only the setup, but the organization around the pavilion that we had, that we, quite frankly, worked with other provinces to strengthen their presence as well, as we are Canadians first. If we were to do it in the future, I think if we lined up in a market of interest and a market where we could have some of that on the ground support in the lead up to and post a COP event, I think we would consider it again. But as I say, it would have to be a market of interest. So you're looking at agriculture, one of the mine products, the energy industry, maybe the nuclear industry, something like that.
So while you were there, Premier, standing up for Saskatchewan resources, we had the ministers Wilkinson and Guilbeault bringing out both methane cap and emissions cap. Don't you feel like you're fighting your own team while you're there? Like they're kind of pulling the football away from you there, Lucy?
Well, I would say, many may feel that way. I would say this: there's two policies announced this week: the methane emissions cap and the cap and trade system that they have announced. None of those would be put in place prior to a federal election, and so they're going to have to win an election before they would ever come into place. And I don't see the path for that. I think Canadians have wisened up to the consequences of the reality of these policies. 5 various policies that are impacting the price of fuel, that are impacting indirectly the price of the groceries each and every time we go to the grocery store, and are impacting the inflationary pressures that families, businesses, and communities are being subjected to across this nation. And so I think you're going to see a different direction in the years ahead. Uh-oh. Hello, everybody. Did I lose you all?
Oh, you're back.
You're
We just
back.
got
You
you
just
down.
lost about the last 20 seconds or so.
Okay. I'll restart here. I would just say that in Canada, I think, as we may move forward, what we would look for in a federal government is one that would partner with provinces in telling the story that we have as Canadians, the story of the most sustainable oil that you can find on Earth, the story of the most sustainable food products and ingredients that you can find on Earth, the story of a province and a nation that provide uranium to the world for clean nuclear power, the story of a province, and in our case, Saskatchewan, and a nation that are doing everything that we can to advocate, to promote, and to create partnerships so that global citizens, in particular our allied global citizens, are able to reach their aspiration of food and energy security, and do so with some of the most sustainable products that we produce. We as Canadians should be proud of what we do. We should not hang our head when we go abroad. We should be proud not only of what we produce and what it adds and provides to so many global citizens, and not be ashamed in any way. And that's what I see different happening in the years ahead.
I see 650 CKOM. Will, if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. But if not, we can certainly, Liam or Brian, if either of you have a follow-up question, we could take another one.
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead, Liam.
I think he just took his earbuds out, so I might give him a second there.
I'm good.
I was curious about one of the big talking points that you have is about if the world took on Saskatchewan's regulations towards emissions, they could reduce them by about a quarter. I was wondering where is that information coming from, and could you maybe expand
you can
on
look
that?
you can look at our Sustainable Saskatchewan website, and that information is on there. In addition to information with respect to and the source will be cited on there as well. And it'll be associated with, for example, the sustainability message that we have around the food that we produce. Wheat and canola in Saskatchewan on a per ton basis are 65% lower than the next 7 largest producers around the world. That work was done by the Global Institute for Food Security. When it comes to field peas produced in Saskatchewan, they're 92% lower than the next 6 or 7, I believe, producers around the world. We know what uranium can provide in displacing natural gas and coal in many other areas where natural gas and coal are still being built, in particular coal in many other areas. And, we had a number of dialogue sessions with our potash companies as well, that, our province is the largest exporting region of potash in the world. And we produce potash that has a 50% lower on a per ton basis emissions present than our competitors. And so from our perspective, this is something that I think as Saskatchewan residents, we can be incredibly proud of. I talked to a couple of our federal ministers with respect to the energy industry in particular, and the commitment that I had made this week, and the commitment I had made to the Emirati government about 18 months ago, the last time I was here, was if they were going to take the courageous step at ensuring that the uranium mining and nuclear industry would have the opportunity to be part of the conversation, and to take the courageous step of ensuring that the oil industry was going to come into the conversation at COP28, because they had not been part of it up until now. The commitment I had made to them is we were going to bring the oil and the nuclear industry, the uranium mining industry from Saskatchewan. We saw the uranium mining industry and the nuclear industry achieve great heights in the early days of COP, with 24 countries committing to tripling their nuclear footprint in their respective countries. That's good news for the world. And we brought with us, and Alberta brought a number of their oil producing partners as well, but we brought with us a net zero oil company that's not only from our Boundary Dam 3 project, but buying additional gasification plants, so taking carbon from and sequestering it in their oil field. They sequestered 41 million tons, over the course of and are operating as a net zero oil company, which I'm not aware and have not been informed of any other net zero oil company in the world. We have oil companies, investment that has occurred in that North Battleford to Lloydminster area, where, for example, Cenovus has reduced their over just the last 3 years, a target of 80% reduction by 2030, and a target of net zero by 2050, which I would point out aligns with the federal government's national target of net zero by 2050 as well, which begs the question, why the 5 various regulations on that industry? If the industry is starting to line up targets and timelines and plans, why is the federal government really meddling, getting in the way, and making some of the plans that the energy industry has to become net zero, those that aren't already, of which we have one of those net zero companies today? Why is the federal government not those plans can come to fruition, rather than putting in place regulations that may actually hinder it?
Given the time, we'll just go one last question for Brian there. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Premier. You broke up there for a bit. I believe he was talking about Whitecap Resources as the net zero company.
Right.
Premier, you were... I guess what would the net result have been if Saskatchewan, if yourself, and if the 50+ delegations had not gone?
Well, our engagement with not only the United Arab Emirates, people, government, industries, and the business community here would not have been furthered to the degree that it has. We've seen a couple of very immediate deliverables in partnerships between post-secondary institutes, partnerships between the government and a very large agricultural company such as Bayer. We saw this afternoon another agricultural conversation around monetizing the whole carbon conversation and some of the sustainability initiatives that have already been put in place in our ag industry, with zero till, with precision farming, those types of things. And that was with a group called CANZA, which is the Canadian Alliance for Net Zero Food System. And what they are focused on is how do we ensure that Saskatchewan and Canadian farmers can actually monetize some of the investments that we have already made and continue to make in producing the most sustainable food that you can find on Earth. I mentioned a few of the other deliverables as well, but I think there's another broader relationship building effort here that I think you will start to see some of those deliverables over the next 3, 6, and maybe even 9 months. And I guess I would just close, Brian, with saying after you attend a conference like this, and at this level, and this, the level of investment we had, which was an additional $765,000, all of the other advertising and such was expenses that the government does have budgeted each and every day, but diverted and focused on our presence at COP28 this particular year. So the $765,000 that was additional investment this year, I think it was worthwhile. And I think many, if not all, of the organizations that attended would agree that the opportunity to tell a little different story on Saskatchewan peoples and Saskatchewan industries and Saskatchewan post-secondary and organizations' behalf is beneficial. We often go out and talk about food security and energy security and how we want to be part of your long-term supply chain. What this was a global stage where we had the opportunity with a very high visibility pavilion to talk about what Saskatchewan is providing, yes, but how we are actually producing those products and how those products are some of the most sustainable products on earth. And if you care about your energy security and if you care about your food security and you care about the environment that you're going to leave your children and your grandchildren, then you should buy those products from the province of Saskatchewan. And so I think it was beneficial. It was not something that we participate in at this level each and every year. But in markets of interest and markets where we had the ability to do what we did here in the United Arab Emirates, would we look at making that additional $700,000+ investment again on behalf of the people that are employed in these industries in Saskatchewan so that we can tell how they are producing the most sustainable products on earth? We would consider it.
Thank you.